level field next to me, which means breaking news podcast. This one is a little bit different because your boy is house sitting right now and my laptop is over there. So I'm doing this off of my phone. So my audio doesn't sound great. This mic is just a prop at this point to look good.
You just broke the entire fourth wall, man. What are you doing?
We're breaking the fourth wall. We're letting everybody in on the secrets, and that's just the truth of the matter. This is my phone
I can
is on
appreciate
stand
that.
right now that I'm holding up with my feet. So improvisation to make this work. But
You are a man of many talents. Not only can you talk about basketball, but you can also hold up mic stands with your feet while also juggling pool balls with your
I don't
hands
think
at the
I'm,
same
I
time.
don't, I don't think I can do that part. But anyway, Kenny, let's get to what we're here to talk about, and that is the addition of Jaykwon Walton.
Man.
This one is, a surprise to a lot of people. Came out of nowhere, especially with the news from earlier this week of TFAO Leonard going pro and not playing collegiate ball anymore, preparing for the 2024 NBA draft, not playing at Memphis. Obviously, some people were okay with this. Some people felt that it left a hole. We kind of felt that it was, a luxury to have TFAO Leonard. Obviously, it helps to have him, but we didn't think it took away the ceiling of this team too much. Now, Penny and the staff add Jaykwon Walton, and I think you're right back there, and maybe your ceiling's even higher now. This is a guy that averaged almost 14 points per game. Last year at Wichita State, great three-point shooter, long, athletic, solid defensively. Memphis has played him multiple times going back to his time at Georgia when he was there with Anthony Edwards. Memphis played them in home, I believe, correct?
Yeah, they played Georgia at home and in Georgia, yes.
Yeah, so they got Jaykwon Walton his freshman year when he was there with Anthony Edwards, and then his second year once Anthony had been selected number one in the draft. I believe that's how it worked. I think they played the first game of the series in Memphis, but that doesn't matter. Spent 2 years at Georgia, went the JUCO route, and then popped back up at Wichita State last year. Had a very productive season. Was at one point committed to Alabama. Ran into a little bit of legal trouble there that we may get into a little bit of that later and just kind of talk about it, but was committed to Alabama, was let go by Nate Oates and the staff there, then committed to UCF, and now he's at Memphis. Not only is he committed, signed to Memphis, he was at practice for the University of Memphis today. So it's a crazy way to unfold, but immediate thoughts on Memphis adding Jaykwon Walton.
Well, I mean, I think if you and Gabe have mentioned this quite a few times on the bluff, and you talk about, you've mentioned before, what are some things that you can dissect on this roster that would, some weaknesses, I guess, that Penny Hardaway might have on this roster. And I think across the board, Christian, in any league, any team, anybody, they would always say that you could always get better at shooting. And today's edition of Jaykwon Walton is a big fix towards adding a shooter. Shot 53% from the field last year, 40% from the 3-point line, almost 80% from the free throw, or from the 3-point line, 43% or 40%, and 80% from the free throw line. I mean, the guy is just a shooter, and he's a big kid, 6'7", can shoot the ball, can put the ball in the basket. And that if we're talking about, losing TFL and what he could possibly bring, everybody understands what about TFL and the fact that he was an elite defender, rated number 6 in college basketball coming into this year as a defender. Questions about his ability to play offense, his ability to shoot. You don't have those questions with Jaykwon Walton. The kid can play. The kid can put the ball in the basket, and that's always a win for any team, no matter who you are, to add a player like that on July 27th during the offseason. It's unbelievable that he got a kid like Jaykwon Walton. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people have pointed out the fact that people weren't willing to take a chance on Jaykwon Walton after the arrest. He was arrested, I think, back in April or May, while he was committed to Alabama. And people were like, well, no one was going to take a chance on him, so it's not surprising that Penny got him. He was committed to UCF to play for Johnny Dawkins, so
yeah,
people were still interested in Jaykwon Walton. It's not like he had a felony, some crazy felony or something like that. I believe it was a marijuana charge that a cop stopped and smelled marijuana, went through the car, whatever, found it. I think he found a handgun as well. Don't believe that it belonged to Jaykwon.
Right.
I believe he just got arrested for possession of marijuana. Okay, whatever. It's legal, decriminalized. Whether it's medical, recreational, whatever, who cares? I'm not worried about marijuana. I mean, KD just came out yesterday and said it's the NBA. Everybody smokes weed. Like, okay, cool, whatever. Who cares? I'm not worried about that. I understand why Alabama parted ways.
100%.
That they went through the PR nightmare last year that they had to endure, and Nate Oates and the staff obviously didn't feel like it was something that they wanted to deal with right now. And I don't think anyone is saying anything bad about that, because they really did have to endure that all year last year. So move on from him. You're Alabama. You got plenty of talent. Jaykwon kind of in the TFAL situation there at Bama, where, yes, it's a luxury to have him, but he didn't necessarily make or break them. But now you get him at Memphis, where I believe he's also a luxury at Memphis because of what this team has. But there have been question marks surrounding David Jones' eligibility. Has he graduated yet? Has he not? Jordan Brown, has he graduated yet? Has he not? When will they be able to play? So with these questions kind of looming and circling, and the uncertainty surrounding those things, getting a player like Jaykwon Walton, who, let's just say theoretically, David Jones is not able to start the season, and maybe he takes a semester to be able to play, you're really not going to miss a beat with Jaykwon Walton in the starting lineup instead of David Jones. I think David Jones probably has a little bit higher upside and maybe a better two-way player. But Jaykwon Walton in this conference last year, which this conference is now worse, averaged 14 points per game, shot 40% from the three-point line, is a versatile defender. Like, Penny just keeps adding pieces that can take this team to the next level. Obviously, we still have the caveat of DeAndre Williams and what that means and what that holds for this program. I think they're a top 25 team right now where it sits if Jordan Brown and David Jones are on the team and playing. And if they get DeAndre, I'm still in the camp that they're a top 10, top 15 team. So what Penny's been able to do in this transfer class is one thing. It's been extremely impressive. But even more impressive than the overall additions in the transfer class is what he's done over the last month or so. This late in the cycle, Javon Quinterly, Jordan Brown, and now Jaykwon Walton. This late. Like, teams aren't getting new players right now like they're preparing for the season. Some people may have a problem with that, getting players this late. Personally, I don't care. Get as much talent as you can and get as much top-level talent as you can. And so what he's done recently is pretty absurd, and Jaykwon Walton's another player that can come in and play big minutes if he needs to and be productive. And you really can't ask for any more than that, especially on the heels of losing TFAL Leonard and now getting a player in Jaykwon that I think increases this team's ceiling and upside overall.
100% agree. I mean, I don't really have anything else to add other than it is the moves that Penny has made over this last month are pretty amazing, and I don't think anybody expected that. I mean, he mentioned it today in the press conference availability that, he never panicked, even though there was a lot of panic that was happening, locally here in Memphis about the roster and things like that. But this is, I think Penny has settled into this idea that this is the way things are going to be. And he's very clearly shown an ability to not only identify talent, but also maintain relationships and be able to, when things kind of go sideways and things kind of go left for a certain guy, to be able to bring them in and have Memphis be the place for them to call home. And from what I understand, Jaykwon wanted to be here. This is where he wanted to be for a while. And so it's a pretty incredible. You look at the roster and you look at what Penny now has. I don't think that there's necessarily a concern that David Jones won't be available this year. I think from what the reporting out there is that he's done with his classes. He's just waiting on.
That's what I've continued to hear, but then there's been the lingering things of who knows, like it's not official yet. Like, so I know that's what we've said from the beginning is that, he's graduated, he's ready to go. But then you have people on the other side saying, we're not sure yet. So
all we know is that he's not in Memphis right now. And that's always a cause for concern, right? Like it's July 27th, but it just is. Again, it's another luxury piece that you add that I think, like you said, increases the ability, that increases the opportunity for the Tigers to make a deep run. And it's going to be an exciting year. I think it's going to be an
Yeah.
exciting year for Memphis.
Yeah, you mentioned the press conference today. Have you put that out yet, or will it come out after this?
I'm putting it out before.
Okay, so people will know that it's out and can see everything that Penny had to say. I want to draw kind of a parallel real quick. You tell me what you think about this, and then we're going to wrap this up. We've seen kind of this trend in professional sports over the last several years. Think about the Phoenix Suns and what they just did as far as loading up on top end talent that may not be there long, that may not have much of their prime or much of their career as a whole left, but they still added very talented players. Think about what the Los Angeles Rams did to win a Super Bowl a couple years ago. The amount of talent that they added and just going out, signing free agents, trading away draft picks. Les Snead had the F them draft picks shirt after they won the Super Bowl. It feels like in college, I'm going to explain my thoughts on this. In college basketball and college sports are different, but it really feels like Penny Hardaway and the staff are just pushing all the chips in for this year and saying, we're just going to get every bit of talent that we can possibly get. We don't care where it overlaps. We don't care how people think it fits on the floor together, or if we have too many pieces, or how we're going to figure this out or whatever. It's like, no, we're just going to push everything in the middle, get every player that we can get that we want, and go roll the dice and see what happens. And that doesn't mean, I'm not saying that to say like this is going to be blown up in a year and next year this team's going to be terrible, because he can go do the same thing. And that's the difference between college sports and professional sports. Like, you have a situation with the Phoenix Suns with the new luxury tax stuff that's coming up next year. Like, they could be screwed for the foreseeable future. The Rams felt kind of the blowback of what they did to win a Super Bowl last year when they only won, I think, 4 or 5 games. College sports, with the new landscape of college sports and NIL, you can do this every year.
Yeah.
And it feels like Penny's like, okay, let's try this strategy. And if this works, then we're going to repeat this. Like, we're going to push everything in. We're going to get as much veteran experience, talent. We don't care how long they've been in the game. We don't care about their NBA draft upside. We don't care if they get drafted, play pro ball, whatever. We just want to win. And I love that, because, 2-3 years ago, it was how many guys can we get drafted? We want to be an NBA factory. And now Penny's like, no, screw that. I don't care about being an NBA factory. I care about winning games and potentially winning a championship. And that I love. I love the fact that I don't care if DeAndre Williams comes back and our average age is almost 24 years old in college basketball. I don't care. It doesn't matter. You'll be one of the most, if not the most experienced team in the country with, to me, top 10, top 15 talent. So love what he's doing, pushing everything in and letting it ride.
Well, he said that in the press conference today. I mean, and you can go watch it on our YouTube channel. He said it, they were asked about that. Like, is this going to be the new norm? And his response was, yes, this will be the new norm.
I didn't even know that. So cool.
And he said, I mean, so you're 100% right. Like, it is the difference is that there's no like tax implications and like,
right.
Salary. So like
No salary cap,
yeah. So there are going to be, when a pro team does this, there are implications down the line. In college, it's different. We're talking about the day and age of the transfer portal. You're talking about 1-year contracts with a player that will more than likely move on after a year, and you just go revamp your roster at the end of the year. And so you talk about him being all in this year. This is going to be, I think, the new norm, is that this is the way that he has seen the path forward in terms of success at the University of Memphis, is being able to revamp your roster with veteran laden talent. And I guess my question, you mentioned something a few minutes ago. I know we wanted to keep this quick, but I wanted to ask you this. You mentioned him saying basically, I don't care what how the roster fits together. I'm going to go get the best talent I can possibly get and let it kind of fix itself as we go. Do you see this roster, specifically with the addition of Jaykwon Walton? This roster seems pretty complete to me in terms of the pieces being able to mold together. It doesn't feel like just a hodgepodge of talented guys that, how are they going to flow? They're talent at every position, too deep, really, at every position at this point. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think they fit well. I think a lot of people's questions have been, why so many wings? Like, when they had TFAO Leonard as well, to go along with Jonathan Pierre, David Jones, some of these guys, it's like, man, it just feels like they're so, excuse me, feels like there's so many wings. Like, also including Carl Sharon-Fant, Ashton Hardaway, J.J. Taylor. Well, first off, I don't think the freshmen are going to really play this year. And we've stayed pretty hardcore on that sentiment that it just – how is a freshman going to – how is a, top 100 freshman going to beat out a guy that has 4 or 5 years of college basketball experience? I just don't see it happening. There are talented enough players in the country that can do it. I just, my bet's not on that happening. My bet's on experience and overall experienced veteran talent playing. But I like what they're doing. I mean, you look at David Jones and Jaykwon Walton and Jonathan Pierre. Like, they can play multiple positions. I think that a lot of people understand it nowadays, but some people get stuck on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
The positions, the size, what are the parameters for each position, right?
Yeah, and I think we've talked ad nauseum and don't need to really go back into the details of we believe this is going to be a positionless roster to an extent. I mean, you have Jordan Brown, who's a true center. You have Javon Quinley, who's a true point guard. But really, your 2 through 4 are interchangeable for the most part. Guys like Nick Jourdain and DeAndre Williams, if he comes, they're pretty set 4 or 5. But in between that, your 2 through 4 with guys like JP and David Jones and Jaykwon Walton, they can pretty much play the 2 through 4.
Which answers your question of why so many wings, because you have that ability now. They're versatile.
They can do anything.
The wings can play 2, 3. They can even play, if they wanted to go small ball, play the 4. You got a couple of guys like David Jones who I could see them putting at the 4 and running out a small ball group if they wanted to.
And you say small ball, and it's Jonathan Pierre 6'9" and Jaykwon Walton 6'7". So how much quote unquote small ball it really is, I don't know. But yeah, I think it's a complete roster. I think there will be. They will have to figure out who flows best in what area. Okay, we want JP to come in. Do we want him at the 2, 3, 4? Where do we want him? And I think some of that stuff will take time. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, January, February, March, they'll get it figured out, and these pieces will be able to play kind of interchangeably, and it'll be a hard team to beat.
I agree.
Yeah, that's all we got. We're going to wrap this up. Head over to bluffcitymedia.co. Check out everything we got going over there. You can check out our show, me and Gabe Kuhn's show, On the Bluff, every Tuesday at noon on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast. I think that's all we got. So we will see you next time.